The night began like any other, calm and quiet. The streets were silent, and most people were asleep in their warm beds. But in observatories around the world, a handful of scientists were still awake, watching the sky as they did every night. Among them was Dr. Lena Mikhailov, a senior astrophysicist working in Moscow. She had been studying the stars for over 20 years, but what she saw that night made her heart stop for a moment. On her screen, a group of bright objects appeared at the edge of the telescope's view. At first, they looked like meteors, small, points of light moving quickly across the black sky. But after a few moments, she noticed something strange. They weren't moving randomly like rocks falling through space. They were moving in perfect lines, side by side, like a fleet of ships sailing together. Lena quickly adjusted the settings of her telescope to focus on the objects. The image became clearer, and she saw there were many of them. Dozens, maybe even hundreds. Each one glowed with a faint silver-blue light, and they all seemed to keep the exact same distance from one another. This was not something nature did on its own. It was too precise, too controlled. She picked up her phone and called one of her colleagues at another observatory. "Are you seeing this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes," the voice on the other end replied, almost whispering. "It's not a meteor shower. They're flying in formation." By then, other observatories across Europe, Asia, and America were also reporting the same sighting. Amateur stargazers posted blurry pictures online, thinking they had discovered something amazing. But inside government buildings, alarms quietly began to sound. This was not a natural event. It was something else. Within an hour, the news reached military radar stations. Satellites confirmed that the objects were moving fast, much faster than any known aircraft, but not fast enough to escape notice. They were not crashing toward Earth like asteroids. Instead, they were slowing down, as if they were preparing to stop. In a small office inside Russia's Space Research Center, Lena sat with a group of scientists staring at live feeds from multiple observatories. The room was silent except for the hum of machines. The objects were getting closer, crossing the outer edge of the solar system. Some of the younger scientists were excited, whispering about the possibility of first contact with alien life. Others looked nervous, thinking about what an advanced civilization might want from Earth. Lena kept her thoughts to herself, but deep inside, she felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C. and Beijing and London, military leaders met behind closed doors. They didn't want the public to know yet. If these visitors were dangerous, panic would spread too quickly. If they were friendly, there would still be chaos as people demanded answers. The plan was to watch, to gather information, and to prepare for anything. Over the next 2 days, the formation continued to move closer. Every radar station and space telescope was focused on them. Scientists noticed something else. They weren't just flying in a straight line anymore. They were shifting into smaller groups, like smaller fleets breaking away from a larger one. Some took a path toward Earth, while others seemed to head toward the moon. Late one evening, Lena was reviewing data when she saw a sudden burst of light from one of the crafts. For a moment, she thought it had exploded, but then realized it was, releasing smaller objects, tiny compared to the main ships, but still larger than any human satellite. These smaller objects began scanning the space around them, sending strange pulses toward the planets and moons nearby. By the third night, the objects had entered Earth's orbit. They stayed high above the atmosphere, far beyond the reach of planes or drones. No one on the streets below could see them without a telescope, but the people who knew they were there couldn't stop watching. Lena hardly slept. She was in the observatory when a call came from a government official asking for her analysis. She told them the same thing she had told her team. They are not acting like explorers. They are moving with purpose. They know exactly where they're going. In her mind, that was the most unsettling part. Explorers scanned everything they found. They wandered. They made mistakes. But these objects didn't hesitate, didn't waste time. They had a plan, and they were following it without deviation. Around the world, similar conversations were happening among scientists, military leaders, and government officials. No one could say for certain whether this was the beginning of peace or the first step toward invasion. By the end of the week, the whole fleet had entered the inner solar system. The world was still asleep, unaware of what was coming. Governments were racing to prepare for the unknown. Some military bases were put on high alert. Satellites were moved into position to get better images. Special teams were assigned to try and send radio messages toward the crafts. But no response came. Lena stood by the wide observatory window, looking out at the night sky. To anyone else, it was just stars. To her, it was a battlefield waiting to happen, or perhaps a meeting place for a history-changing event. The silence from the crafts was the loudest warning she had ever heard. Something was coming, and it was already here. The morning began quietly across the world. But for those who knew the truth, it was the day everything changed. In the early hours, strange shadows passed over the Earth's thin blue edge in space. They were not clouds. They were the alien vessels, now clearly visible to high-powered telescopes and military satellites. In a large control room deep underground, a team of defense analysts watched the live feed from orbital cameras. The crafts were enormous, long, dark, and shaped, like arcs. Some appeared smooth, while others had strange glowing panels along their sides. They moved slowly now, almost silently, their speed reduced as if they were being careful. The first sign that they were here came when one of the massive vessels stopped over the Pacific Ocean, far above the clouds. It hovered there for hours, not moving an inch. Then, without warning, it released several smaller drones. These drones shone with a bright white light and descended toward the surface like falling stars. Over New York City, one such drone appeared in the sky. People in tall buildings spotted it first, a glowing, spinning shape, unlike anything they had ever seen. Within seconds, all the streetlights flickered and went out. Cars stopped in the middle of the roads. Phones died in people's hands. Every piece of electronic equipment within 5 miles went completely dead. At first, people thought it was a power outage, but when even battery-powered devices stopped working, panic began to spread. News helicopters tried to film the strange object, but their cameras failed as soon as they got close. By the time the drone rose back into the sky, the city was left in total confusion. Halfway across the world in Tokyo, another drone had descended. But instead of disabling electronics, it released a strange, low-frequency sound. The sound was deep, like a faraway drum, and it shook through the air. People in the city reported feeling dizzy and weak. Some sat down right on the sidewalks, holding their heads. Animals reacted strangely. Dogs barked non-stop, and birds scattered into the sky. Military planes tried to follow the drones, but every time they got near, their instruments stopped working, forcing them to retreat. The alien crafts stayed far, above, silent and still. No message came from them, no demands, no explanation. Inside the United Nations headquarters, an emergency meeting was taking place. World leaders and their top advisors gathered on secure video calls. The mood was tense. Some argued that the aliens were preparing for an attack and that Earth should strike first. Others, including Dr. Lena Mikhailov, who had been invited to speak as a scientific advisor, urged caution. "They have not fired weapons," Lena said firmly. "They are studying us. If we act in fear, we could start something we cannot control." Her words carried weight, but the military commanders were not convinced. The alien presence was too large, too advanced, and too unpredictable. Every minute they stayed in Earth's atmosphere felt like a countdown to something unknown. As the day went on, more sightings were reported. In the Amazon rainforest, drones flew low over the treetops, scanning the dense jungle with beams of light. In the Sahara Desert, a drone hovered over a remote sand dune, releasing a fine mist that disappeared in seconds. In the Arctic, explorers saw one skim the ice before shooting back into the clouds. All of this happened without a single human being able to stop them. Weapons could not lock onto them, and missiles would not even launch when aimed in their direction. It was as if the aliens had complete control over Earth's skies. News finally broke to the public. Television channels around the world interrupted their programs to show blurry footage of the crafts. Crowds gathered in city streets to watch the skies, pointing and gasping as small flashes of light appeared above. Social media exploded with videos, theories, and fear. Some people believed the visitors had come to help. Others were certain it was the beginning of the end. In the Moscow observatory, Lena stood with her team, watching one of the alien vessels drift slowly across the night sky. It was so large that it blocked out the stars behind it. The thought that something that big could move so silently made her uneasy. Her assistant turned to her. "Why don't they say anything?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "Maybe they don't want to talk. Maybe they're listening." Hours passed, and still the vessels remained. They did not attack. They did not land. They simply stayed in the skies, sending out drones to different corners of the Earth. Every time one returned to the main ship, a soft pulse of light rippled across its surface as if it had collected something important. Somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, a massive fleet of human naval ships had gathered. They stayed just below the alien vessel that had been hovering there since morning. Submarines monitored the depths below, while fighter jets circled high above. But even with all that power, not a single commander dared to give the order to fire. Late that night, over the Sahara Desert, something unusual happened. One drone stayed longer than the others. It floated in the same spot for nearly an hour before shooting up toward the sky with sudden speed. A moment later, the main ship above shifted slightly, and a beam of pale blue light stretched down to the ground. Satellites caught the moment from orbit. The beam did not burn or destroy. It simply shimmered for a few seconds before vanishing. But when a small group of soldiers went to the spot the next morning, they found something shocking. The sand there had turned into a glass-like surface, smooth and solid as if it had been melted by extreme heat. Scientists could not explain it. The heat required to create that effect would have been enough to destroy anything nearby, yet nothing else in the area was harmed. It was a message, though no one knew what it meant. By the end of the second day, the alien vessels had mapped the planet from the skies. They had visited the oceans, the deserts, the mountains, and the cities. They had disabled technology, tested human reactions, and left strange marks on the land. But still, they said nothing. The silence was no longer simply unsettling. It was terrifying. And somewhere deep inside, Lena knew it was only the beginning. For days, the alien presence had been constant. People had started to live with the idea that the massive ships were above them, watching, studying. But then, without warning, everything began to change. It started in the early morning over the Pacific Ocean. A satellite camera caught a strange sight. One of the largest alien vessels slowly drifting toward a thick, shimmering cloud-like shape hanging just above the water. The cloud wasn't a normal cloud. It was bright, almost metallic in its glow, and it seemed to pulse gently, like a living thing. The alien ship moved closer and closer until it was right above the strange phenomenon. Then, in one smooth motion, it slid inside and disappeared. No sound, no flash, no sign of struggle, just gone. At first, military commanders thought the ship had cloaked itself. They ordered the satellites to scan for heat signatures, but nothing showed up. It was as if the massive craft had never existed. An hour later, another alien vessel, This one over the Indian Ocean began moving toward the same direction. It, too, vanished into the strange glowing formation without leaving a trace. In the Moscow observatory, Lena was watching the live feed when the second ship disappeared. She froze, staring at the screen. "That's not a retreat," she whispered. "That's something else." News of the disappearances traveled quickly through military channels, though the public still didn't know. World leaders were divided. Some thought the aliens had finished their mission and were leaving. Others suspected something more dangerous. The problem was, no one could explain where they were going or why they weren't coming back. By the end of the day, 4 more alien ships had entered the shimmering anomaly. None emerged. The formation itself seemed to shift slightly after each one passed through, as though it were reacting to what entered. A small research submarine was sent toward the location to investigate from below. The crew aboard was calm, even curious, as they descended beneath the ocean surface. They reported that the water was unusually warm, and their instruments were picking up strange magnetic readings. But halfway through their approach, their communication went silent. They never returned. The following day, the alien fleet had thinned even more. Drones that had been scanning cities were recalled to their main ships. No new sightings of alien activity were reported. People in major cities noticed that the strange glowing lights in the sky were fewer than before. Some thought the aliens were finally leaving. But Lena felt uneasy. This didn't look like a planned departure. It looked like something was pulling them away. She compared the satellite images from before the disappearances to the new ones. The glowing formation above, the Pacific was growing. Its edges rippled like waves, and it was brighter than ever. In a secure military conference, scientists proposed theories. One group believed the formation was a natural space-time distortion, like a rift or wormhole, that had somehow appeared near Earth. Another group argued it was a trap, something hidden in Earth's own atmosphere or oceans that targeted the alien technology specifically. Whatever it was, the result was the same. Ships went in and nothing came out. 2 days later, the last alien vessels in low orbit began to move. Instead of heading into deep space, they too made their way toward the shimmering anomaly. The world's most advanced telescopes captured the final moments of the fleet, massive black arcs gliding silently through the sky, descending into the strange glowing cloud and then vanishing completely. By nightfall, the skies were empty. The silence that followed was almost unreal. After so many days of tension, fear, and wonder, there was nothing left to see. People who had been glued to their windows or screens turned away, unsure how to feel. Were they safe now, or was something even stranger about to happen? Governments began releasing cautious statements to calm the public, calling the event an unexplained atmospheric phenomenon, and urging people not to panic. But behind closed doors, the truth was being studied in every possible way. Lena was invited to join a private research group analyzing the anomaly. She watched the slowed-down footage of the ships disappearing over and over, trying to find even the smallest clue. The glow around the anomaly seemed to flicker right as each ship entered, almost like a heartbeat. And in the seconds before they vanished, there was a faint distortion in the air around them, as though reality itself bent inward. She thought about something she had once read in an old maritime report from the 1700s, an account of a ship that sailed into a strange fog in the South Pacific and never came out. At the time, it had been dismissed as a sailor's superstition, but now Lena wasn't so sure. Days passed, and the anomaly itself began to fade. The glow dimmed, the ripples slowed, and eventually it was gone, leaving nothing but open sky and calm ocean behind. The official explanation given to the public was simple. The alien fleet had left Earth. But Lena knew better. Ships that left Earth should have been tracked leaving the solar system. There were no such readings. It was as if the fleet had been erased, not just from space, but from existence. Late one evening, Lena stood outside staring at the stars. The quiet felt different now. She wondered if somewhere, in a place humans could not see or reach, those alien ships were still trapped, or destroyed, or maybe in another world entirely. Whatever had happened, it was clear they had entered Earth's domain, and none had returned to report back. Months passed since the last alien ship had disappeared into the strange, glowing formation above the Pacific Ocean. The world had returned to its daily routines, but the memory of those silent vessels still hung over humanity like a shadow. People whispered about it in cafes, debated it on television, and argued endlessly on the internet. Some believed the aliens had simply decided to leave, while others suspected they had been destroyed by something far more powerful than them. Behind locked doors and in restricted research centers, the truth was being quietly studied. Governments in different countries had gathered every piece of data: satellite recordings, sonar readings, and strange electromagnetic measurements taken before and after the disappearances. The most valuable files came from the naval ships, stationed closest to the anomaly. Those ships had recorded waves of magnetic pulses so strong they had even disrupted military equipment. Dr. Lena Mikhailov had been given special clearance to review the information. Sitting in a dimly lit conference room in Geneva, she examined images taken from space. Each showed the same thing: the alien vessels moving toward the glowing cloud, a slight shimmer around them, and then nothing. The moment they entered, they seemed to vanish into thin air. "What do you think it was?" asked a voice beside her. It was Dr. Ramos, a marine geophysicist from Chile who had been studying ocean patterns for years. Lena kept her eyes on the images. "It's not a natural cloud. It behaves too precisely. And it only appeared when they arrived." Dr. Ramos leaned back in his chair. "Then you believe it's a defense system?" She hesitated. "Maybe. Or maybe something else entirely. Something alive." That idea was not as strange as it sounded. In ancient ship logs dating back centuries, Lena had found scattered accounts of phantom seas and vanishing mists reported in the same region of the Pacific. Sailors had written about strange compasses spinning wildly and some ships never returning at all. At the time, those stories were dismissed as legends. But now, with the modern disappearance of an entire alien fleet, they seemed worth considering. In a secure session, military officials revealed something else. Sonar scans taken before the anomaly appeared had detected massive shapes deep beneath the ocean floor, shapes larger than any known submarine or sea creature. These shapes had moved slowly, almost as if they were positioning themselves before the alien ships arrived. Then, just hours before the first alien craft entered the anomaly, the shapes vanished from sonar and the glowing formation appeared on the surface. This sparked a new theory. Earth might not be as defenseless as humanity once believed. Some scientists speculated about an advanced hidden civilization living deep beneath the oceans, one that had remained secret for thousands of years. If such beings existed, they could have the power to create energy barriers or traps capable of pulling alien ships out of the sky. Of course, no one could prove it. The only evidence was the timing and the strange patterns of the anomaly. Meanwhile, the official public explanation remained carefully controlled. Leaders told the media that the alien fleet had left peacefully, avoiding talk of disappearances or traps. The reasoning was simple. If people believed Earth had a hidden, unstoppable defense system, they might grow careless. If they believed the aliens had been defeated, they might also provoke other civilizations unknowingly. Lena, however, could not stop thinking about the possibilities. She remembered the faint heartbeat flicker she had noticed in the footage before each ship disappeared. It didn't look like a random energy burst. It looked rhythmic, controlled, like a living creature breathing. Weeks later, she was invited to join a small expedition aboard a research vessel headed for the same coordinates where the anomaly had appeared. The ocean there was calm now, but the water was unusually clear, almost glassy. The crew lowered deep-sea probes fitted with cameras and sensors. At first, they saw nothing but dark blue water and drifting particles. Then, without warning, every monitor went black. The ship's communication systems went silent for exactly 30 seconds. When the cameras came back online, the probe was still there, untouched, but the sensors had recorded a massive magnetic pulse, similar to the ones detected during the alien encounter. The event was enough to unsettle everyone on board. Some of the crew refused to dive again, but Lena felt a strange sense of confirmation. Something was still there, watching, waiting. When she returned to Geneva, she presented her findings to the Research Council. Whatever removed the alien ships, she told them, is still in place. It may be permanent, and it may not be human. Some members dismissed her conclusions as speculation. Others listened in silence, clearly disturbed by the thought that Earth might share its home with another unseen intelligence. The most unsettling question was this: if such a power truly existed, why had it revealed itself now? Was it only defending the planet from outsiders, or was it guarding something else, something it did not want the aliens to find? That question kept Lena awake at night. She imagined the aliens' last moments as they entered the anomaly. Their instruments failing, the light surrounding them, the feeling of being pulled into another dimension. Were they still somewhere trapped? Or had they been erased completely? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. The aliens had not left on their own. Something had taken them, and it was powerful enough to change the balance of the galaxy, and Lena couldn't shake the feeling that it was still watching, not just the skies, but humanity itself.